of the ongoing, not coming, the ongoing war against us, etc. Dr. Naila, yes.
I just wanted to add, you were talking about the relationships between melanated men and women being, strained and under attack.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm looking at on the page of BLM,
it's part of it.
And I'm looking at about them. And so when you read this, it says, we affirm the lives of Black, queer, and trans folks, disabled folks, undocumented folks, folks with records, women, and all Black lives along the gender spectrum. Our network centers those who have been marginalized within Black liberation movements. What's missing from that statement are men, our melanated men. They don't say anything about the man. They don't say, of course, folks that have been folks with records, but not all of our men have records. So they don't specifically say anything about the man,
of course not,
about the family,
of course not,
and what they're what they're about has nothing to do.
Of course not. Now, the system's not broke. The system works very well. The problem that the people have in general when they look at things like this, right, is they look at it from the perspective that, quote unquote, the system is broke. No, the system works perfectly, and the system instituted under doctrine of discovery has been successful in dissolving the family. You got to remember, and this is not a mark or a strike against people who are either gay or lesbian or anything like it. It's not even a strike against them. That has been pushed as part of the genocide operations. See, just like this. A woman and a woman does not produce life.
True.
And it's against nature. It has nothing to do with the person or the person's personality or whether they're good people or bad people. We're not even condemning it. We just look at the facts. A man with a man produces no life. Woman is the gate of life, no matter how you twist it, fold it. Man and woman is the foundation of nature of life in all species, in nature, in divine law. That's not condemning people who are gay. That's just a fact. But what the people don't understand, I think very often, because you'll see them emphasizing it now or getting people to accept it under the guise that they care about people. But people should care about people because they're human beings, not based on their sexual orientation. But you notice how that's skipped over because the fact of the matter is this is the fact. All right, number one, males are outnumbered by female by nature because this is how nature works, right? So if they can separate families, get young males to start thinking about trying to be a woman, inducing the young males that they cannot make a living to serve their families unless they do drugs or sell drugs because they'll lock them out of other parts of resource acquisition or control. Use women to promote this and use women under the Black codes to emasculate their men, which will cause a greater divide. And when you have men who would have a desire to support and to protect their families, to be condemned by women as being anti-feminist type thing. And then you have jailing of young men at a very young age. Then you have them being drugged in schools. Right. Now, keep this in mind. School nurses feeding prescriptions to children, even against parents' wishes, they're not doctors. And they're not pharmacists. How is it that they are licensed to drug children? It's because they're targeted. So you'll see a lot of these activities in school where they're drugging the children. If you do any research, you'll find that the major target is young males. usually the women or the young females are more protected, and so people don't pay attention to the fact that they're attacking the young males. And this is actually part of the genocide operations of Unum Sanctum and the doctrine of discovery, to tear the family apart. And of course, these young men growing up are not aware until a later age that their role as protectors and providers for their families have been neutralized at a very young age. So many of them get out into the world of family totally handicapped, totally disabled, having no access to the resources of the land, not knowing that the land is theirs, having no access to the economics, not knowing that the resources that create the economic are theirs, thinking that the people who are governing over them and their families, whether under the guise of human services or family services, etc., under the Margaret Sanger operations of family planning, under the abortion clinics, which are all part of the Margaret Sanger operations, of the genocide operations of Unum Sanctum and the doctrine of discovery, having no idea that these are actually continued institutionalized acts of war against them. And as they grow up, not recognizing that the females are being trained in many instances to be agents of the state against their own interest, against the male, and over a period of time are actually helping to destroy their own family structures, which is, of course, is what you're experiencing right now on many fronts, in many areas across the land, etc. And not knowing that all of this is being engineered.
How? Through the subtly camouflaged usurpation and destruction of values created, built, or earned by others. Mm-hmm. In fact, those value destroyers use neo-cheating without fear of being caught, without suspicion, and they are successful to the extent that they use neo-cheating. Consider how many of the most successful politicians have for years destructively regulated and harmfully controlled the value producers. You said it's us. It's the values in us.
It's called birthright theft.
They have neo-cheated the public for unearned personal power.
Yes.
Their power ploys have created jungles of destructive regulations and inefficiencies. They hassle busy individuals, cripple creative scientists, and prevent private enterprise from fully developing its productive and technological capacities. That arrogated authority not only diminishes everyone's spirit, but diminishes everyone's standard of living, and even prevents the development of cures for scourges such as heart disease, cancer, and AIDS. I'm gonna stop right there. But I'm just saying, in 1998, 32 years ago, or 22 years ago, this man wrote this book, which is 500 and some pages, and that's just that's in the intro. But he may as well have written it today, as I've gone through this.
Yes.
He may as well has written it today, and it is my understanding that they did some, no pun intended, trumped up charges and
to get him out of the way.
Him after writing this book, which is liberation.
Exactly.
This is a liberating tool for anyone, and it's easy to read and easy to understand.
Exactly.
Turns the light bulb on, and how many of us could be in another place?
Yes.
Just by it, and it's not even stuff we don't know. It becomes stuff that you forgot.
And then look at this way. This is from a political perspective, right? That is another statement of simply telling you the operations of colonial operations. He's telling you what the parasiticism is.
He talks about the media and everything. We're being bombarded.
It's all
entertainment.
It's all networked. As an example, where you see Abdullah talking about for years, or where he changed the hertz in language in music, right, to dumb the people down, also to cause what you call vibrational sickness. Truthfully, and by the people not knowing the culture the culture. They don't know that vibration is part of more science, is also part of healing, where sound and light have always been traditionally part of African culture for healing, etc. And so they've lost cognizance of ancient established principles. And this is also part of the vampirism. So again, while the world is waking up, the people here are waking up. They're a little, compared to the rest of the world, they're a little slow indeed, because the belief systems have been imposed upon our people for so many generations that they've actually stopped taking responsibility for divine reasoning, thinking that their so-called religious orders were a divine protection. In other words, they start believing things without examination. Whereas, and this is back to the point, where you talked about how the people forgot, if they actually even went back to childhood, the basic inquisition, or the basic inquisitiveness that a child has, if they even maintain that, most of them in thinking would start liberating themselves a long time ago. And this is again why it was so important for the dark priesthood to burn books and to enforce expurgatorius and prohibitorum. That's vital in the politics of the United States. And as a matter of fact, you can see expurgatorius and prohibitorum blatantly, and this is back to what we're talking about, the proclamation, blatantly operating through social medias. As soon as you start talking anything that really helps the people,
shadow ban.
They will shadow ban. They'll demonetize. They'll attack. They'll even send assassins out in the name of de facto warrants, etc., which is also what they did to a couple of sisters that had suits on them, actually, a few years back, and literally went in their houses and murdered them. Yes, they did. And by the people thinking that these people are actually legitimate government, they start thinking about, what did this woman do to cause them to shoot her and her child? What did she do? Type thing. That meant that's a training. Right. It never dawns on them that these people are mercenaries. And yet it's so blatant. Not unlike this recent attempted assassination of that brother they told to get out of the car recently, and they beat him down. As a matter of fact, you could see one of the so-called sheriff definitely actually put his hand on his nose trying to smother him, and the sister was taking pictures, and he moved his hand. They was gonna kill him like they did George Floyd. And as a matter of fact, that's current. That was in this past week, and they beat the brother up. Oh yeah, but we know what it is. It's unum sanctum operations, but our people need to know that that's what it is. But the deal of it is they're showing their hand, all masks are off. The major thing is for the people to understand is that these people are not your government. They are contracting mercenaries to enforce unum sanctum operations, which the people know about. It's not racism, it's not prejudice, it is war. They're warring against the people. And they've used the people's own taxes to actually hire contractors to war on the people. That's really the truth. And people are truthfully, when you start examining some of the statements people make, they're actually in denial of that because they don't want to accept that these people are really warring against them. Because there's two things. If you pay attention to some of the statements that are made by some of the people when you start talking about constitutional principles and treaty principles, the way they respond to it as if you're introducing them to something that's going to hurt them indicates that they have become slaves to the corporate operators. The fact that they fear persons that they think or have been calling government is indicative of the fact that these people are warring on them. Since when does a so-called public servant that taxes you and then war against you become your master? And what point do you start denying that that's what the relationship is? which is really what's going on right now. But again, the proclamation in law, from a principle of law, is firing them and for publicly any claims that they have been making on the stock market or in international trade that they have jurisdictional power over you. It is a rebuttal and a reversion of a state. This is another reason why they're mad, because really, and people don't know this, it kills the bonds. People are looking for them to respond and say, oh, we've got your papers and stuff. And, you know, we know that, you know, we're obligated. They're not the organized criminals. What you need to understand is the instruments that they have created already on the stock market that acts as a foundation of their wealth that they do not convert back to the people. They give it to Wall Street because that's part of the unum sanctum operations. See, this is what it is. When the people go out there and work on their job, J-O-B, for private commercial paper, they're trained from childhood that they're getting paid money. They're not getting paid money. They're getting voucher transfers. These are licensed voucher transfers. And even people that talk about fiat often won't be honest with the people and tell them bluntly what it really is. The Federal Reserve notes are licensed, which is on itself conditional, voucher transfer instruments on debt. That's what they are. That's exactly what they are. Now, so which means the persons who receive them are goaded into thinking that they're building wealth when they're actually building debt. Now, because they get things for them, right? They're under the guise that they're gaining when actually they're going deeper in debt. And what you'll really pay attention to, they've trained the people in consumerism. But when you really analyze what the people have been consuming, for the most part, 80% of everything that people have been buying in the last 20 to 30 years are things that have no what you call legs or long life value. They become obsolete. Right? They become obsolete and they become problematic and they become essentially useless. So now you have what you call a discard platform, what you call recyclables, right? Hold on. Now, I want you to pay attention to what I said a little earlier. When the nations no longer buy U.S. Treasury bonds, those of you who are listening, I want you to pay attention to this because I've told you about this for a while. Do you notice, and I noticed this the other day when I was sweeping up outside and cleaning up, that the trash collectors who are usually late, right? We're now taking both the recycle blue cans and the regular trash together, whereas before they used to send separate trucks. But I recognized what I was looking at. What my neighbor was saying, was making note of that, right? But I understood it because what has happened is this. I just want you all to notice this. This is relative to international trade. The Manchurians, who you generally know as Chinese, put a stop to the U.S. corporation and England, etc., sending their recycled trash to China, which they also made, other products with. And so the real deal is that the recycling industry that was 300 billion average a year came to a screeching halt. So that's why you see the trash is being mixed again now. So now, so that means that industry is now being affected. And so now you're dealing with both the shipping and the flights. So you have the trade windows of the world, which has froze up. And many of the containers that were coming from China were being sent back with all these plastic containers and stuff. And China is no longer accepting that. That's another part of what I've been telling you all for years, that they're going to stop buying U.S. Treasury bonds. So that is also part of the market operation. So start paying attention to the trash people taking both the recycles and the regular trash together. The other thing I want to make mention to you, the fiat currencies, which right, wrong, or indifferent includes digital, etc., are collapsing. So they're trying to cover up the fact that they robbed all of the retirement funds, all the pension funds, etc., and your major corporate city operations at North America, as an example, Philadelphia, Chicago, San Francisco, Kansas City, etc. These different political jurisdictions operating on the land. We're not talking about the land itself, and we're not talking about the people of the land. We're talking about the corporate operators and the operating on the land, etc. Have robbed the people to the degree that they cannot meet the liabilities attached to both retirement funds, pension plans, etc. And they don't want the people to really find out and figure out that the politicians themselves, under being members of the Roman Curia, have actually, they didn't break anything. The system wasn't broke. The system worked perfectly. The purpose was to rob the people. It's just that they're not in the optional position to continue to rob other nations, because the nations of the earth are no longer in this what you call fired up atmosphere of buying U.S. Treasury bonds, which we told you they were going to stop doing, and you have a feedback loop. And so the real deal is, this is another reason why they're pushing digital, because keep in mind, whereas fiat currency or fiat notes being fiat and being worthless to the degree that other nations have their treasuries predominantly covered with what you call the reserve currency, which is why they didn't do a lot of things sooner, etc. Why also the members of the Roman Curia want to go to digital so they could rob the people quicker than they did before. Because the real deal is the real money is silver and gold. And I want you to recognize this. For those, I'm not going to go into this. Read Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution.